You're listening to the Freio
Music Podcast.
To the Freio Music
Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Freio Music Podcast. The featured artist in this episode is Eric John Kaiser. Eric is a singer-songwriter, blues and rock guitarist who writes his own lyrics, and his music has a message. His latest track is about global warming and is accompanied by a very powerful music video. And I'm telling you, this music video feels like it could be a movie. I mean, it's the only difference is that it's short, but the scene that is set and the attention to detail of the characters in the music video is really extraordinary, and props to everybody on the team that went into creating that music video. So check that out. Stay tuned for a few audio snippets and previews of Eric's music. Stay tuned and enjoy.
Bonjour, I'm Eric John Kaiser, and you are listening to the Freio Music Podcast. Stay tuned.
Where I get rid of this old skin and I can wave the empire goodbye.
Sure, so my name is Eric John Kaiser. I'm a singer-songwriter based in Portland, Oregon. But I'm originally from Paris in France. I've been in Portland since 2006, but I grew up and spent over 30 years in Paris in France. That was where I was born and raised. And met a girl from Portland who was on vacation in Paris, and I followed her in 2006. And since then, it's been kind of a crazy ride. I make a living playing music. I've released 5 albums. The first one was recorded in Paris, and then the 3 ones after were recorded in Portland, and then my last album was recorded in Quebec. And I make a living mainly playing gigs and tour on the West Coast. I got to play at a festival in 2015 in that region, and I met a bunch of great musicians, including a producer. And that's why I wanted to go back over there to make a record with people that could, understand the lyrics. Because I love American music, and I love, kind of blues and rock, and a lot of music's influenced by blues that are come from the U.S. and only the U.S. has them. But as most of my lyrics are in French, so I try to get that balance. And Quebec's actually a really interesting place for that because they play like North Americans. They're North Americans, so they have that same kind of musical heritage as we have here in the States, but they still speak French. So it's different from France for that. So that was an interesting experience for sure.
Great. And you were mentioning something about when you're touring.
Yeah, so I mainly tour. I mainly make a living playing gigs, but I also do tours when I release CDs. So I tour on the West Coast. I've been to Louisiana many times, and I try to go to Quebec. And when I can, I also try to go to France. It's just a bit more of organization. That's why.
Let's go back to your early childhood. Tell me about your first musical memory.
Oh, my first musical memory. Whew. It's probably listening to. There was this program on French radio that was around 10 o'clock at night, and I had this little alarm clock that had a radio station on it. So my mom would put me in bed, but I'd stay awake to be able to listen to that French radio program that played a lot of American music. And that was really cool at the time. So that's kind of my first memory of, of music that way, being under my sheets to kind of listen to that radio at night and kind of discover stuff. And then my mom, when I was 10, she told me I needed to choose an instrument. So I chose guitar, but I did several years of, was I 8 or 10? Anyway, around that time. But I did several years of classical music. That's how I started, with a classical guitar that I still actually have. And then I got sick of the academics, because in France sometimes the approach to music is not necessarily as fun as it is in the States. So it's a lot of exams, academics. It's very strict. So I got sick of that and just went to the local YMCA and found a great teacher that on the same guitar showed me how to play some Stones tunes and Beatles and all that. So that kind of changed a lot of stuff too, starting from that. And then I bought my first electric guitar after that. And then it was never looking back.
Yeah, then it's history. I didn't know that YMCA did music lessons. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a version of like YMCA in France, yeah, but they had music. It was cool. It was really cool. I think it's really a question of that he was a great open-minded teacher too. Yeah.
And when you were in school, were you learning musical notation, or did you ever grasp that, or did you take anything with you?
I learned a little bit when I was in music school, but unfortunately, music in France when in school is not at all comparable to what exists in the States. The schools in the States are incredible for kids with sports and arts and all that. You don't have any like band. You don't play any jazz, from what I understand, because of course I didn't go into school in the States. But you learn, it's very academic and kind of a bit elitist, and you play flute, and it's really boring. Again, it probably depends on the teachers, but it's definitely not as close as what seems to be happening here in middle schools or high schools. So
yeah. And so once you found that guitar teacher who was teaching you the Stones, obviously that sparked a chord within yourself. You probably liked that music and realized that you could play it. So what were the next steps that you took after realizing that you can play anything with that same instrument?
Yeah, he really opened the door. Then the next steps after getting that electric guitar, I kept on, trying to play stuff I could hear on the radio, stuff I liked. And then I had a friend who had another friend who played guitar, who was in school with him. So I hooked up with him, and then we started jamming in my basement, just the two of us. And then we thought it'd be cool to try and form a band. So we did the band. It was in high school, which lasted for a while. And then did the first EPs, because I had buddies that were sound engineers. So we recorded a few EPs in my dad's basement and all that. And that was fun. Yeah. But that was
what was that band
professional. Called? At the time, it was called Melt, MELT.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you guys were just learning and experimenting and doing it yourselves.
Yeah, and then that's how I started. It was about we're a bunch of friends and play in the garage, and then started trying to find some gigs. And there's a thing called La Fête de la Musique in France, which is every June 21st, which is a really cool. It's kind of like a holiday. I mean, people still work, but legally you're allowed to play music wherever you want, all day and all night. So people set up in the streets everywhere, and then you play, for people just passing by and all that. It's like a huge party. It's super fun. And so I found a little cafe in Paris and asked him if I could get electricity from him. So we'd put a power cord there and then just plug everything and play in the street. So that was always a fun gig. And that's where
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. The Fête de la Musique in France is the Party of Music, or Make Music Day, it's called. They're trying to do it in the States a bit too, and all worldwide. And then that's the first time where I started, I was the one taking care of finding gigs for the band and doing posters and things like that. So that's where I kind of started learning different, aspects of that side and trying to pitch venues to play in different places and play in like some parties or student halls and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that. When you first were starting, because it's a struggle to get that first big gig or to get in the door when you're a young musician.
Yeah.
And you were learning about like advertising and promoting yourself.
Yeah.
What were some of the big hurdles that you had to jump over in those early days?
I think the first big one was having a good sounding recording. Because if you want to try and convince somebody to book you, even if there's no money involved, but just, play on a nice stage in front of people, then you have to have a good recording. So, have promotional material with that. Then have something that also looks good, aesthetically. So I had a few buddies who did graphic design, so I'd ask them for help, make a logo and do stuff like that. And learn from what other people would do. I mean, hip hop artists were always very good at doing that. So kind of look at what they do and try to, take some out of that. But unfortunately, I'm not in my 20s anymore. So that was also pre-internet, which is some people listening probably kind of think I'm an old fart or something. But it was it was a totally different ballgame. I mean, I think the younger kids now to play music, they don't always realize how easier it is to have the web and what it offers as possibilities for promotion, and plus the whole digital aspect of things that exist now for recording. So but at the time you didn't have that. My first demo I had was on the tape. I bought this Tascam 238 or something like that, this big recorder, and I had a buddy who was sound engineer, so we were all happy because we did that recording. It was 8-track but on a tape. So yeah, that was
wow.
Yeah, that was fun. And then you duplicate a bunch of tapes and try to pitch people, drop them off, and do a little blur bio thing and just try to be persistent about it.
That's awesome. So recording has come a long way, and to jump ahead a little bit, or to the present day, you've done 5 different albums over the years in different countries. What are some of the new techniques that you're adopting in your sound?
In terms of the tools available, or in terms of
Yeah. I mean, as far like I'm a recording engineer, so I'm a little bit of a nerd.
Oh, cool. Okay.
With this stuff. But just as far as like recording gear, obviously you go from 8-track tape deck to now digital, where you have like infinite,
right?
Layers. But are there any other notable tools that you're using nowadays that make your life easier?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not a nerd, and I love writing songs. So I really focus most of my time and energy on the craft of writing songs. So improving my guitar skills, understanding how other songwriters write songs and lyrics, and also improving my writing and all that. So, and there's a lot of classes online that are super cool now available. That's why I remember when I first started doing wanted to cover some Pearl Jam, I could not understand what he was doing because Stone Gossard is all in open tunings and all that. And now you search on YouTube how to play Rearview Mirror, and you're going to find a guy who's going to explain to you super quick. So that knowledge is incredible. And it spreads the knowledge, and it goes faster to learn stuff. So the reason I'm saying that is that I don't spend too much time on the techniques, but when I do a record, I like to work with people that are strong for that. Like, I'm not a good arranger, I'm not a recording engineer. I can hear production, I can hear what I want, but I can't necessarily do it. So it's about building a team. So to answer your question, I always keep it very simple, guitar and vocals all the time. Sometimes I use kind of a beat too to kind of put down the rhythmic and then sing over it. But I used Cubase for a while, but now I'm just on GarageBand on my MacBook Pro, and I love it because I try to keep it simple. But I don't have like demos that are 38 tracks. I always keep it pretty simple because I want to stay to the core of the DNA of the song, and then we'll go next step. But what has changed compared to before, it's huge change for me, is mainly the pre-production process. I don't do anything final on my own on my computer, but the pre-production is just do demos and know what you want before you go in the studio. That's just the tools available, incredible.
When you're making that, do you have a studio musician in there with you making those drum beats, or are you doing it on GarageBand?
No, I do on GarageBand, and I use some loops there, things like that, and then I also take some stuff. The editing on GarageBand is super easy, so I just kind of import stuff and play around with it. Yeah, but that's for certain songs.
Great.
Other songs are just straight up acoustic and vocals. But another thing I love, I bought that years ago. It's the Zoom H4n, which is a recorder, but I love looking for ideas with that too. And if not, I have a little preamp with two audio sonus, I think it's called, with two inputs that goes directly, a sound card is the word I'm looking for. So, but I really keep it very, very simple. But also, I kind of I don't do electronic stuff and all that too. I love hip hop and electronic music, but I don't really explore that, or it's not. I usually play guitar and I sing. And that's how I play, electric or acoustic guitar. But that's the kind of format I'm always on. Which doesn't mean you can't explore other stuff, because I believe that if a song sounds good, just guitar and vocals or piano and vocals, you can actually arrange it any way you want in so many different forms after that.
Absolutely. Now, are you playing keyboard as well?
No.
When you're adding some of those? Okay.
No, unfortunately. My wife plays keyboard, so
okay.
If I need keyboards, usually, if we try stuff, we usually, just plug her in and try it out. And she plays piano, and she does a lot of background vocals on my records too. And she's very good for that, and she's impressive because she doesn't really speak French, but she does the background vocals in French. So she listens to the lyrics. Yeah, it's fun. And was she the vocalist on the EP, the first track, 1 + 1 = freedom? Yeah, exactly. Yep. That's we did that that was our wedding gift for the people at our wedding.
Oh, that's a beautiful gift.
Thanks. Yeah, it was fun.
That's unique.
We went in studio to do it and gave that to people over there, so it was fun.
Sweet. All right. So when you're focusing on your songwriting and guitar, have there been any influential teachers that have taught you the blues or showed you the way, or do you learn by ear?
Well, that first teacher years ago definitely showed me, opened the door to possibilities. Then I had another teacher a bit later who was more of a shredder guy, kind of, with long hair and kind of heavy metal. So he was very technical.
Yep.
So that was cool to work on the sound and just the possibilities of the electric guitar. But then I did most of it on my own and just playing with other people, learning. But I think before moving to the States, you have a very romantic idea of what American music is, and used to listen to, a lot of Stones. The 68-72 period I really like from the Stones, and Led Zeppelin, and then Black Crow stuff, and I love J.J. Cale too a lot. The early ZZ Top records. I mean, in terms of guitar playing, some Clapton stuff, and then I discovered open tuning too, which just opens another door to what you can do with a guitar. And
just for listeners out there who might not know what open tuning is, basically you can tune your guitar to any chord that you'd like, and you just strum it with no fingers on your left hand on the strings. and it's plays that chord. Is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Like,
and
you
it's
tune it open G or something.
exactly, and that's 80% of the Stone songs are in open G, for example, and which is Ry Cooder showed Keith Richard that tuning, but it's a lot of bluesmen use that before because it's used with when you play bottleneck guitar to slide guitar on it, because basically you just slide with the bottleneck on the strings and you're in one key. A lot of guys in lap steel too. Most of the guitars are in open tuning. So yeah, you tune your guitar to have one chord basically, and then you build out of that. It's used a lot in blues and by extension in blues rock. Like the Stones are really the ones, but I mean, all the blues influenced guys like Black Crowes or Black Keys, and a lot of it's open tuning. And then a lot of grunge guys use that too. Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, they use that a lot. That open tuning too, and it's a way to have lower notes too than just a regular E. So you put it down to D and things like that. Or the guy from Rage Against the Machine, Tom Morello, is usually in drop D also, drop D or open E. So yeah, it opens other perspective, other sounds, and I read Keith Richards' book, which was fascinating, and he said something about guitars like, the more you put into it, the more it's going to give you back. And that's always very true. That's what I find fascinating with guitar is, you think you learn something, you think you're just, okay, I'm going in circles. And then if you stretch out another style, another thing, it just opens a whole other door of perspective on how to use a guitar. And that's just, you start again from scratch almost, but you discover a whole other world. And that's just incredible. I mean, I'm more and more into jazz and things like that, and it's so rich. When you try to make a melody on vocals on jazz chords, because the chords are so much richer, it just opens other doors too, and your ear gets used to it after a while. So you explore other stuff, and that's what I really like in songwriting.
That's interesting. And how do you keep yourself kind of approaching the guitar in a new way? Because after playing for so long, people are prone to getting it in a habit of playing the way that they play.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
How do you keep learning new things and new approaches? How do you keep your mind active?
Well, actually, I use covers a lot because also I sing a lot in French, so people like to hear covers. When I do a 3-hour gig, they like sometimes covers. Not everybody wants to hear 3 hours of French music, especially people who don't know my music beforehand and just discover me. So I learn how to play covers and all that. So I explore a lot of different covers. And I love to... I'll give you a concrete example. Maybe that'll speak better what I'm trying to say. But I just saw a really interesting interview on Netflix on Nile Rodgers, the guy from Chic. They have those Netflix music interviews series. I think they did one with Moby and all that, and Noel Gallagher. But he was explaining how he interacted with his bass player and how the composition he would do. And those guys would come from jazz, but they wanted, pop songs on the radio kind of vibe. So, and with the funk. And so he simplified a bit his playing coming from jazz. And then he always has those riffs. So I always find it, once I saw that documentary, then I started looking a bit more on how he wrote songs. So that's a way for me that's very refreshing, because then I try to work on, some of the riffs he's doing, and to try and understand what his mindset. Because all great artists, they usually have kind of a know-how and a recipe. And I love trying to understand what that is. So, and most of the time, if it's important for me to go into the details and really understand, what he's doing. Because you can play a lot of songs like Boy Scout style, where you just simplify the chords. But then you kind of miss the essence of what the guy's trying to do. So for example, Le Freak C'est Chic, that song, I just decompose and try to learn what he was doing on guitar and understand. And that, because the guy's singing at the same time too, but he always got kind of right hand funk to it, which is, and he did Get Lucky with the Daft Punk. He did so many songs, that guy. So that always keeps me moving and all that. Covers are a great tool for me to acquire knowledge in a way, instead of, because I'm not very good at just sitting down learning theory or learning just cold stuff. Covers are a fun way to learn in a way, and discover new chords too, which are always a great tool. And so that's one example. I also do a lot of old French classic tunes, and usually they're songs from 40s, 50s, 60s, like Piaf, Aznavour, Jacques Brel, all of that. And the arrangements are so rich that to kind of adapt the guitar and vocals is always very interesting too, because there's so many rich chords in there. So it's a balance between, because it's like orchestra as a whole thing to play it, and it's a lot of time pianos, and pianos a different approach than guitar. But that also, opens other doors for me, because it's I discover other worlds and all that. I don't know if that answers your question. That was a pretty long answer.
Oh, it does. It does. That was great. I think and it kind of goes back to how you were learning as a kid, I believe. The one approach, which might have been like the textbook approach, wasn't sparking any joy. It wasn't fun.
I mean, the playing of classical,
learned,
I loved it. I still have the first book when I'm playing classical guitar. It was really cool, but it's the way it was taught more than anything else. And not telling you as a kid that it's kind of like training when you do sports. There's some things that are annoying to do. You need to work on your stamina and things like that, but there's a reason why you do it. The kind of reproach I had with that school is they just forced things down your throat without explaining why it's important. Because when you learn an instrument or things like that, it's not everything is fun. Or it's like a recording, when you make a record, not everything is fun in the process. There's a lot of fun times, but there's a lot of stuff that's, you have to set up everything right. You have to learn how to do it. You have to, for guitar, there's a lot of body memory to muscle memory stuff. And that takes hours of practice and playing all the time.
Absolutely. So let's jump into one of your songs.
Sure.
I'm gonna attempt to say it, and then you correct me.
Okay.
And say it right. But Terre Brûlée.
Oh, yeah, Terre Brûlée. Yeah.
Terre. So what was the inspiration behind that song?
So terre is earth, and brûlé is burnt. So it's like burnt earth or scorched earth. The inspiration behind that song is when I was in Gaspésie to that same festival and all that. I met a bunch of new friend artists, and we're just hanging out together in a hotel room, and one of the artists it's pretty small town where we're in, but she was single and all that, and she was playing on Tinder, and on her phone, and I had never seen Tinder before, and it was interesting to see how she just swiping through all the profiles and all that, and
yep.
And just the symbolic and the power she had, because she was a pretty good looking girl, and as she was an artist and all that, so she had that kind of energy and she was looking at all the local guys, and we'd see all like a frat boy, and you see this guy he was clearly married but still wanted to go out. All these kind of funny profiles of guys and guys with cars and I was looking at her and made me think of like, oh wow, it's interesting the dating situation going on here. She didn't date anybody, do anything, but it's just like the power to the girl in a way. And she was looking through her catalog of guys. And I found that made me kind of think, oh, that'd be a good idea for a song. So that's why I call it Scorch Earth. It's like, the Hun Attila, you kind of go somewhere and like burn the earth and then move on. So the song's about her just, trying to tease some guys and all that. But in the end, way deep down inside, I could feel she's still trying to find somebody with who it could be a good fit. So it's the kind of modern world. And I'm drifting more and more to writing songs too about social media. And on my song, Une place au soleil, a spot in the sunshine, it talks about that too, about that kind of obsession about being famous on social media and all that. So it's interesting to see how things evolve, and at the same time don't evolve. So the tools that are out there on their phones, just seeing all the picture of these guys trying to sell themselves, basically, that's what they were doing on Tinder. And I'm happily married and all that. I've never been on Tinder, but it was just looking at that, it made me think, and it's a little snapshot of society and how it is, and how that girl was like having fun and trying to look through a catalog of guys, but at the same time I could feel that she was deep down inside very romantic and looking for something, certain happiness and a love affair that would make her happy. So that's what that song's about.
Ma belle consulte l'offre autochtone. Le bal a débuté, elle a toute la nuit pour désaltérer toutes ses fantaisies. Un soir d'automne monochrome, la belle promène masquée sa libido. Elle connaît bien les lois du marché. On tape à la porte de son beau domaine. Ils sont tous pressés d'entrer, ils se démènent. Un soir d'automne monotone, la belle hésite à choisir son homme. Elle connaît bien les lois du marché. L'amour en vendine se passe ou à emporter. Dis-moi ma belle, que cherches-tu dans le cervelle? Perdu au milieu, ce bal masqué rituel.
The sonic quality of it, reminds me of J.J. Cal.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
You mentioned him as one of your artists that you've listened to and appreciated over the years.
Yeah, and that we really looked for that in the sound of that song. But we doubled the vocals to have that kind of J.J. Cale sound on the vocals too, and the way I did.
I was gonna ask, but you said you weren't into the audio engineering. But
I don't know how to do it.
So,
I know it was the idea of Richard, the sound, the guy who did all the sound takes on that. He wanted to do a J.J. Cale sound, and the way he panned the guitars and all that too was the same. Like two rhythmics, and then I love doing that too, where J.J. Cale was super good at that. The Stones are good at that, and the older Stones records, and also ZZ Top is really good at, you do one rhythmic in one tuning and another rhythmic in another tuning, or with a capo, and it's kind of the same chords, but you kind of harmonize the rhythmics, and it gives that kind of sound spectrum, and it helps with, like, you have boogie tunes or grooves like that. It really works well. That's kind of studio tricks, which are cool.
Yeah. Well, you guys crushed it together.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So you just released a new music video.
Yes.
You want to tell me about that one?
Sure. Yeah. It's been a pretty big project. So I have a song that's on that last record, made in Gaspésie, that we did in Quebec. That a song that talks about global warming, because I've always wanted to write a song that talks about global warming, but I didn't know how to approach it. Because I didn't want to be condescending or, have the impression of lecturing people, because, I'm part of the problem too. And so I was looking for a way to kind of get the message across. And then I thought, well, I had the idea one day of imagining a world where there's just one season left, where it's just a hot, brutal summer, where people have to wander around looking for water and Freon, and then they can't go out, when it's too hot, so they hide, and then they go out, and then it's kind of a post-apocalyptic vibe. It's kind of a mix between The Road and Mad Max in a way. So I had that song, and then 2 summers ago here in Oregon, near Portland, there was there were big fires in the Columbia Gorge, and then it lasted over 3 weeks at least, and we had a lot of smoke come to Portland, over Portland. And, growing up in Paris and France and all, you don't, there's not as much nature around. So, you didn't get that kind of issues very often. And there it really struck me. So, because it's getting drier and drier every summer, and, their problem with forest fires more and more. We have the same problems in California and all that. And
Colorado too.
Oh yeah, I bet. And so I thought, wow, okay, it'd be cool to try and make a music video with that song and try to raise awareness just at my own level. And so that's how the idea of the music video came about. And then I have a buddy in France who does really cool indie music video called David Bassot, and he had done 2 other videos for my album, but in France, so I wasn't there in the video. So he did kind of like short stories, which are really cool. And then I thought, wow, it'd be cool if he could come over and do it. So did a Kickstarter and raised some funds, and a bunch of people. We raised almost $6,000, and a bunch of people helped us, give us support. And then so able to have David come over, take his plane ticket, and then we offset, his plane ticket and the gas we use as much as possible. And then,
What do you mean offset? How did you offset it?
So one of my fans, it works in that way, is you can buy credits to offset your consumption of fuel, basically, and oil. So I told her like how many, so the plane ticket, and then how many miles we did in the car, and then you buy like a credit, and there's apparently different techniques to offset it. I don't know all the specific, but they plant trees to compensate that kind of stuff, or there's, other techniques to do that too. So anybody can actually do it, which I didn't know. I thought it, but a lot of companies try to do that. What made me discover with that though is that you look at the number of trees and how long it takes to offset that plane ticket, it's insane. So it's not because, and that's part of the big problem, but the situation we're in is not because you plant 3 trees that you're going to offset. It's like the number of trees you need to plant to offset one plane ride, for example, from, say, Paris to Portland is crazy. So we pollute way more than we can, but that's why we need to change our habits.
It's great, though, that you're not just singing of it and speaking of it, but that you're trying to actively take action to offset your carbon footprint or whatever the term is. But that's impressive as an artist to consider that and to be mindful and take active steps.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, we try. I mean, I learn as it goes too. I didn't, you learn about it, and then I think we're all learning in that process. At least the people who want to learn want to do something. But with that video, the positive thing too is it's incredible number of people that wanted to help. It's like you feel a bit. It gave me the impression I was the voice for a lot of people that wanted to talk about it or wanted to, express that, but didn't know how to do it. So I think as an artist too, it's kind of our responsibility sometimes to say what people would like to say, I guess, which I'm a big fan of the end of 60s era is, Bob Dylan and guys like that, even the Woodstock era and all that. And Neil Young is incredible that way to kind of, make people think with songs and the power of songs. Bob Marley was incredible too for that. And I think to a certain extent, I guess we have a certain responsibility, and that's what I've learned from that experience too. And I'm very proud to have all that support because I just threw it out there. I was trying to do it, and then I realized so many people was like, "That's great, you're doing that. It's really important. We need to talk about it." And and music's a good tool and a good medium to do that. It's more soft than I guess a political discourse, which everything that goes with it and the values and perspectives with it. It's a bit more neutral. Although I did get some people, it was kind of funny, I didn't expect that either, that kind of got pissed about it. But at this point, honestly, if some of my fans, people that don't believe in global warming, things like that, I don't, at this point, it's like, I can't really talk about. It's, I don't know how to say that nicely, but man, the Earth is not flat anymore. So it's people for centuries thought the Earth was flat. So we have a problem with global warming. If you don't believe in it, I respect your point of view, but it's gonna be hard to have a discussion. I'm not saying the solutions are easy. I agree with that, but not believing in global warming in this day and age is, I think, a bit utopian and naive. But that's so. But I had a few people that got pissed about that, but which is always.
It's okay. You can't please everybody all the time.
I know,
and if you're gonna take a stand,
exactly,
you're gonna piss some people off. So I commend you for it. It's
but I honestly, I also
piece
think.
Of art.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh no, keep going.
No, but I also think that the big majority of people are not like that. I think you hear a few people that say that, but the big majority of people is, we're a lot of people are on the same page. I don't know if we're on the same page of finding solutions, because I think the problem is very complex to solve and things like that. But at least I know I live in Portland, but I still think that it's people understanding what's going on, because I think we see it. We see it, I'm 45, but we see it. You see it. You can compare it to before. You compare even to, you just see what's going on. You can feel it. It's concrete now. So.
Yeah. And so first of all, for everybody listening, go watch that music video. It's a great piece of art, great piece of music. And the visual aspect is impressively produced. It almost felt like a movie in a way.
Yeah.
So it really came together as one piece of work or one message. So, and in that video, you list a bunch of facts. You also, it's in French, but you have the translation.
Yes.
So obviously part of that effort is to educate the listener. Is that correct?
Yeah. Educate's always I mean, I don't educate, yes, or share knowledge, because I'm not somebody to educate on that on that subject. You see what I mean? But definitely, but that was the whole video is David did everything. I mean, I helped out and all that, but it's really David Basso, and he filmed everything on an iPhone, which was on his iPhone 4, which is pretty great.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. He did a bunch of research. He's really cool. He's kind of a nerd with all that, but yeah, check out his website if you can. David Basso. David, so David and Basso. He does a lot of really cool videos, and so he did all the cinematography. But then it was his idea too to have, a little girl in it, but holding those panels and putting numbers in it. It's just it adds a layer of meaning. And then we have people too that help with the Kickstarter that are in there to kind of thank them, but also show that it concerns everybody. But yeah, the numbers, we did a lot of research and try and find relevant stuff. So went on the UN, UN's website, and I didn't want to drift into politics, because it's not at all. It's not a question of common interest and values and where we're going. It's really showing the facts about what's going on. And yeah, so I did a bunch of research and trying to find, relevant sources of information and data, basically. Try to stay on the data. But yeah, it was to share that, and I think that the solutions will come through us. I mean, obviously on the political side, it's moving a little bit, but it doesn't seem like it's moving as fast as if we do something about it. Just all of us. Change comes from, people in the first place, I think. And I think that's changing. I mean, that's a positive thing. But what I think also what discovered this whole adventure is, I think in the history of humanity, it's the first problem that's global. Because we get pollution here from China, that comes from over the ocean and all that. And, when I order stuff, if I order stuff online, it travels all around the world and pollutes other parts of the world too. So, the whole responsibility and all that, everything's global. So hopefully we'll be able to, solve those problems globally. Because the pollution or it doesn't stop at a border or something like that.
There's one Earth.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I think in the history of humanity, we've never have such a global problem that concerns everybody.
Au royaume des ombres, des frères de la pénombre, chercher de l'eau puis pour me coûter la vie, un éternel été, un éternel été, un éternel été. Parfois la nuit je rêve d'une tempête de neige et des trois vallées. Ils voulaient vivre comme eux, comment leur reprocher? Quand on n'a rien, on veut tout. L'alarme s'est arrêtée, personne ne s'est réveillé. Le mal est fait. Le mal est fait. Le mal est fait.
Well, I think it's a very powerful piece of work, and
Oh, that's very
that
nice. Thank
is the most recent thing that you've created. Is that right?
Yeah, it came out last week.
Eric, I wanted to ask you, what links would you like to share with the listener?
Probably my website. That's
Okay. Will you spell that out?
yeah. So EricJohnKaiser.com. EricJohnKaiser.com.
Great. And you are also on Spotify, Apple Music.
Yes. Deezer, all that, Pandora, and Facebook and Instagram mainly. I use Twitter too, but not as much as Facebook and Instagram, probably.
Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listener? Maybe parting thoughts or questions or whatever you'd like to share.
As an independent artist, I think that's because I actually worked in some record companies in France doing some media and managed a hip hop band that became pretty big and all that. And that was also partly before the web. Then there was the web that came, and then I decided to just become a self-employed musician and kind of follow my dream and just take care of myself and not have a boss. And the whole business aspect of things it's a lot of work to be independent, and to it takes a lot over the time to create and all that. So and especially nowadays there's so much stuff out there. But I think the positive thing, which I've learned over the years, is all the tools are out there. Is you want to put the energy in it, you want to learn, there's so much knowledge. It goes back to a bit about what I was saying, composition and how to, but educating oneself as an artist to deal with the do-it-yourself business side of the music business. There's so many great tools. There's so many great blogs. I just read a book from Ari Hertzstand about the new music business, it's really a good book because it's very complete about a lot of stuff. But it's incredible. There were so many gatekeepers before that you were stuck to make a record. You had to get a record deal to make a good signing record and all that, to distribute it, to get to fans. Nowadays, it's not like that. You can exist on your own if you really want to do it. And again, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not easy at all to do like music as an artisan, basically. But the tools are there, and I think that's a very positive thing for people that that are starting. Then how you define success, I think everybody's that's their own answer. But yeah, go look for the tools out there. There's so many great stuff and so many great people, helping musicians like us. So it's maybe.
Are there any tools out there that you would recommend that are not that you haven't already mentioned? Like you mentioned a book, obviously Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah, those are good tools to do
tools?
your own marketing, but to learn, there's the CD Baby podcast, which is really good. They have a blog too, which Chris Robley does, which is really super interesting. There's Indie on the Move to find gigs, which is a really cool website where.
Cool, and that one helps you find gigs. I haven't heard of that.
Oh, it's brilliant.
That's a good one.
It's a database, so you sign up as an artist, and then it's a bit like Reverb Nation, but I find it better than Reverb Nation because artists. So they have a listing of a lot of venues all over the states according to area. So if you're trying to play in an area, you can put a zip code and it comes with a list of venues. But the cool thing is, as a musician, you can put reviews of the venues. So about how it is and all that, and what's the contact. So that's a really cool website. Then to learn about the music business, or not necessarily the music business, but just the tools out there. There's Ari's Take, which is a really cool blog. ARI apostrophe S and Take T. He releases stuff and has a cool mailing list too. They sends with really valuable information, and yeah, and I mean there's a lot of stuff, and it's about sorting it out. Some are better than others for what you need to do, but there's really a lot of cool stuff. And usually you start with one, they recommend others and all that. So
yep, yeah, it's a rabbit hole once you start learning. So Eric, last question for you. How was it that you were able to build the team around you to, make such an in-depth music video and quality recordings when you are the primary musician in the band or, in the audio art? How were you able to build a team around you?
So to make that music video?
Yeah, and collaborating on your albums and finding the right engineers to achieve the sounds that you like?
Oh, that's a good question. I love soccer. That's kind of my sport. And I think making a record is like having a band is like a soccer team. It's you got to find the right people to play the right position. And to have everybody, I don't think somebody can do everything really well. I think you can do stuff like what I'm trying to say is it's like I'm not a good arranger. So I have guys that work with me that are really good at finding hooks, but they can't write a song. But I love writing songs. So I'm going to, find an arranger it works with. And the sound engineer and all that, it's also, and the producer, according to what they've done before, what their capability of doing and what sound I want. For the records, I always pay everybody because I think it's important to pay them for their work, but also it's a way to make people interested in what you do and concerned. Like not I don't know if concerned is the right word, but I think you get the picture. They're involved. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So right. So and maybe when I first started, I was naive to think that it's gonna be perfect. I was lucky to meet and work with very successful artists that sold millions of records, and you realize that even those guys are frustrated when they go out of the studio. It's like, oh shit, we should have done that. So even at my level, on an indie level, it's never perfect. So if you wait for it to be perfect, you'd never get anything done. So at some point, you just got to jump in a swimming pool and get going and do stuff and be proud of what you've done, And I think each time I finish a record, I've always learned something new. And I think that you learn something new that you use for the next record. I remember my second record, I did it with a buddy in France who helped me with pre-production. And I did that on my Cubase at home and sent him a bunch of ideas. And then in studio, we tried to reproduce that, and we could never get the same energy. And he was like, oh, wow, we'll just keep what I did on my computer for a few tracks, like a bass line or, a guitar riff. And that was an interesting way to learn that, because the album afterwards, sometimes it's just, if the pre-production process, even if it doesn't sound like huge, but there's that good energy, you just keep that. So I think each album I've learned something new and learned how to get, teams. But I think a record stays. One of my big pride is when people come to my shows and say, oh yeah, I bought your record 4 years ago at your gig and I listen to it all the time. The fact of listening to that record all the time, for me, is a huge pride. That means that it's totally different from a live show where it's the moment and it becomes a memory afterwards, unless you're recording it, but that's a whole other discussion. But a record, it stays with people. And that's why it's worth putting a little extra cash and money and, finding the right guys to record. So sometimes it's, if you're a live band, you play all the time, it's important, to get that energy. But there's also some musicians that are really good in studio. Kind of like actors can be really good in just doing movies or ads. So it's worth putting the extra cash to work with guys that are really good and competent. And same for sound guy and producer, because once a record is done, it's done. And that's what you share with the world. So might as well do it as good. But one last thing, I talk too much, but the one last thing is...
No, it's great. Keep going.
I think I think technology's always evolving and it's always going to be there. I think the connection with people, that's what's the most important. If you find the connection with people, then the technology and the technique to record stuff, you'll always find it. But yeah, the team and then the connection with people, that's what makes magic in the studio. That's definitely... And especially on the indie level where, we're not Fleetwood Mac. You don't spend 2 years making an album or 1 year like Rumors and there's a huge demand coming out of it. It's totally different. If it's not fun in the studio, and it's not really worth doing as an indie artist, honestly. It has to be enjoyable and, a pleasure to do it in a way. It has to be fun.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm glad you had so much fun making those records, because I certainly enjoy listening to them.
Oh, that's very nice. Thanks.
Appreciate your time and you coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. This is great. I'm very honored to be there, because your podcast is really good. I've listened to a few of them. They're really cool. I put it on my Stitcher now, because when I drive to gigs and all that, I love podcasts. So you'll be accompanying me on the road.
Be hearing an echo of yourself.
No, I don't know if I'll listen to that. That's kind of weird. But I'll listen to by curiosity. But yeah.
Ma belle consulte l'offre autochtone. Le bal a débuté, elle a toute la nuit.
You've been listening to the Freio Music Podcast with Michael Morahan. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to share this podcast everywhere. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay tuned.